1. Well, this evening I had an experience with an entity that's followed my wife and I through several moves that we've come to terms with knowing is attached to either of us, or something we own, and that is going to keep following us unless we do something to get rid of it. We simply call it the Peeker. The Peeker is of unknown origin, but for as long as my wife and I have been living together, 2012, we've had experiences with it. Starting off, while we were just dating, neither of us told the other that we saw it. You know, not wanting to sound too crazy to the other. We both have had paranormal experiences separately before we got together, and had a few conversations about ghosts, etc. But it wasn't until we moved in together that things escalated a bit. We realized that the house we were living in was haunted by more than one thing, and slowly we talked more and more about these things, and were having matching experiences. It was great to feel validated that someone else saw and felt and experienced the same crazy moments, but also mildly frightening because, you know, ghosts. Well, the Peeker got its name from what it does. For the most part, it's a shadowy silhouette of a person that we would catch peeking around corners or from behind furniture, through windows and doorways, etc., before ducking out of view just as you turn to look at it. It doesn't always duck out of view fast enough, though, and we see glimpses of it. One of his best tricks is when it peeks out at you from a mirror, like the mirror is really just another window or something. That always gives me a good scare. What's also been validating is that our dog has seen and reacted to it on several occasions, as well as the pets of some of our roommates we've had over the years. Through several years of different apartments in different rented homes, it's come along with us, to all of them. And because it just gives us a bit of a jump scare and hasn't tried to harm us in any way, we've just cohabited with it. Well, tonight is the first time that it has severely shocked and scared me. I'm watching a show on Netflix called The Midnight Club, pretty decent series, and I've got the lights low in the room to add to the fright factor. My wife's watching something else in the other room, so it's just me, my snacks, and my comfy recliner while I'm watching. Things are getting a little intense, and I'm subconsciously rocking my chair ever so slightly. The episode's gotten to a pretty visually dark scene, so I can faintly see myself and the chair I'm in reflecting in the low light of the screen. So I see a silhouette moving, rising from behind and to the right of me. As soon as I start to turn to look, I see two large, very not shadow white hands grab the side of my seat, forcibly stopping my rocking, pulling the chair back, and thrust its face around the back of the chair to just inches from mine, before disappearing into nothingness. That was the most physical experience I've had with the Peeker, and probably any other paranormal entity I've come in contact with. Not only was it very up close and personal with me, but it grabbed my seat, stopped my rocking, and jerked the seat back. Needless to say, I stopped my show and turned the lights on while I mentally processed what just happened. Then I detailed everything out to my wife before sharing it with you all here. I hope you all enjoyed my frightening moment as much as I did. Let me know what you think, or if you have had something similar happen to you. 2. I am sitting in my car as I write this. My fiancé is a 31-year-old male, and I am a 25-year-old female. We moved into a new apartment 4 months ago. Everything seemed great at first, twice the size of our old apartment in a very nice community. About a month after moving in, though, I had my first experience. I'll go ahead and say now that none of this ever happens when my fiancé is home. The first experience I had was early in the morning. My fiancé was gone to work, and I was just waking up to do the same. I heard the door to his office open, so I checked his location, figuring he'd just overslept and not wanting to freak out prematurely. His location shows he was at work. Then I heard what sounded like someone shuffling across our carpet. Then the guest bathroom door opened. At this point, I armed myself with a pocket knife and locked myself in the closet. The closet has a connecting wall to the bathroom. I called my fiancée to come home. And while I was on the phone, I swear to God I heard a muffled feminine voice, like someone pressing their face against the wall, muttering, "Hey, hey," in a tone that almost sounded comforting. Now I'm panicking, more shuffling. Then I hear my fiancé come in. He checked the whole apartment, and the only things out of place were his office door was open, and a childhood picture of him had been overturned in the living room. I chalked it up to paranoia. The following night I had a nightmare. I was laying in bed, and that same voice was urgently whispering, "He's coming," over and over while someone was banging down my door. This happened 3 consecutive nights in a row, and all was quiet for about a month after that. The next event happened again while I was alone. I was cooking in the kitchen, and kept getting this eerie feeling that someone was right behind me. I put a bowl of crushed up Oreos on the counter and turned away, only to turn back around and see them on the floor. Looking up, I swear I saw a shadow turn the corner to the living room. By this point, I was solidly convinced my apartment was haunted, but my fiancé insisted it wasn't. Things kept happening, but they were minuscule. Things not where I left them, soft knocks at night, eerie feelings of being watched. The one thing that stayed consistent is that almost every time something got misplaced, that same picture of my fiancé would be overturned. That is, until tonight. I was home alone again. My cat and I were sitting on the couch, while the baby kitty played with his toy in the cat corner. Then, out of nowhere, 3 big, deliberate knocks came from the door downstairs. It was more like a banging. At first, I thought something fell. Checking the house, everything was in place. I've grown fairly used to creepy things happening, so I tried to ignore it, even though for whatever reason it felt more sinister tonight. Well, about an hour later, my light flickered. All of the power did. Okay. Power surge. But then it happened again, and again, and suddenly the lights were flickering like strobe lights. And there was another series of knocks. I am now sitting in my car waiting for my fiancé to get home. Am I scaring myself? Does anyone know what kind of paranormal activity this could be, if any? 3. I don't know where to start exactly, so I guess I'll just start from the beginning. It was November 2020, and I was lucky enough to celebrate my 21st birthday in Vegas. I was so excited to party in Vegas. But the best part of the trip was that my godparents got me tickets to visit Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. While other kids were busy watching Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, I would curl up with a blanket, snacks, turn off the lights, and watch a new episode of Ghost Adventures. Needless to say, I'm one of their biggest fans. Anyway, before the tour, you must take an oath, and you must sign a waiver, basically stating that if anything happens to you while you're taking the tour, they're legally not responsible. One of the many things that is listed on the waiver is that something could possibly follow you outside the museum. And I think that's what happened. One of the exhibits is a mirror that had reportedly witnessed a brutal murder. If you want to know more, the YouTube channel Entertainment Tonight did an interview with Zach about his museum. They cover the mirror and a few other exhibits. Highly recommend it to check it out if you want to know about it. Anyway, the mirror is always covered, and guests can say if they want to look into the mirror. Guests who have looked into the mirror have reported seeing shadow figures behind them or next to them. Me, on the other hand, didn't see anything. At least that's what I thought. It was a week before we got home from Vegas. I was home alone. I was sitting on my bed, working on some homework on my laptop. When, suddenly, I see something in my peripheral vision. I look over and I noticed it came from the direction of my mirror. In my room, there's an oval mirror with a golden trim hanging on my wall. I've had this mirror ever since I was little, and nothing weird has ever happened to it before, until I visited the museum. I just ignored it and went back to doing homework. However, a couple minutes later, I see something in my peripheral vision again. I looked back to the mirror, but nothing was there. This continues. Only in my mirror for a month. I would never see it completely in my vision. I would only see it in my peripheral vision. After that first month, it would start to appear in all the mirrors in the house, and sometimes any reflected surface. And like before, it would only appear in my peripheral vision. It didn't take long for my parents to notice this thing either. They also say they only see it in their peripheral vision too. Whatever this thing is, it seemed to really only stay in mirrors, so I eventually got used to it. It lasted for about 1.5 years, until about a couple of months ago. I thought it eventually left, but why was I wrong? I was up really late one night, and I was watching YouTube videos. It was completely dark in my room except the light coming from the laptop screen. And like it happened before, I see something in my peripheral vision. But this time, I thought I had forgotten what happened, so I ignored it and went back to watching YouTube. A couple of minutes pass, and it happens again. This time, I turn on my lamp, I look back at the screen, and wait to see if I was just imagining things. Then, of course, it happens again, and the memories from over 1 year ago start coming back to me. However, this time, when I saw it in my peripheral vision, it wasn't in the mirror, I saw it in my closet. There is no door on the closet. It's been that way for many years, and I've never seen anything before. There's a top shelf, and I have a shelf stuffed with boxes. At first, I thought it was the boxes, but then I realized that the boxes are white. And whatever I'm seeing is a completely black shadow, so there's no way it can be that. Right now, as I'm typing this, it's 3:08 a.m., and I've already seen this thing a few times tonight. I don't know if I should record my closet tonight or what. All I know is that I'm terrified, and I don't know what to do. 4. This has been going on for about 1 year now, on a weekly basis. I will wake up to a very specific knocking sound, like knuckles tapping against the door, up to 3 times a week. Almost every single time it happens exactly between 4:25 to 4:30 a.m. I'm always very surprised at how precisely on time it happens. And each time it's very weird, but I'm always slightly awoken first. And then the knocking happens. Well, for the past 2 months, it sounds so stupid, but I spoke to someone who told me to do this, and ever since I spoke out loud, thanked any positive entities for protecting me, and asked any negative entities to please exit my house, stop waking me up, and please go back to wherever they came from. It's actually completely stopped happening. Until this morning. The same exact knuckle tapping. I quickly glanced at my phone to see once again it was exactly 4:30 on the dot. How is this possible? As I was sitting awake in my bed a bit afterwards, I heard the very distinct sound of the hallway cabinet opening up, and a little later heard a water bottle crinkling in the kitchen. The thing about all this is I'm rarely ever able to get back to sleep. It's 6:30 now and I'm wide awake. If this is indeed a positive entity, I'm really appreciative, really I am. But I will admit, it can get quite disruptive. For most of the time, this felt weirdly protective. It didn't scare me at all when it happened, and I felt an odd comfort. Like this morning, for example. Until it didn't anymore. In the past, there started to be one in every few times this happened, where it started to feel quite ominous and scary, which is what led me to asking them to leave. I'd be woken up at a much different time, around 3 to 3:30, and would feel extremely frightened to exit my bedroom. It felt disturbing, like some really negative energy lingering about. Funny thing is, before I went to sleep last night, I was thinking a lot about my auntie who passed away a few years ago. She passed away in this house, and is the only family member I was very close and personal with who's passed away. She basically raised me, so I always figure it's probably her checking in to say hi. I'm not sure if that's true, but I like to think so. It's just so weird. I was just thinking about her, which I actually haven't really thought about her and our memories for a good minute. Then this happens again. It must be her, right? My only question would be who and what is the other negative entity lingering about? I always wonder if it could be connected to something that happened to me quite a few years ago. I had an extremely disturbing and quite unbelievable experience with what I can only describe as a demon hovering in front of my window and growling? Like some weird rabid werewolf human animal-like thing? The growling almost transitioned into something resembling a very subtle laughter, but I literally couldn't explain it without showing you myself. I can actually do an amazing impression of it. It was ingrained so deeply into my mind I can't forget it. It was summertime, 2 or 3 a.m., and I was sitting wide awake in my bed in complete darkness, in silence, just scrolling through my phone. My auntie was actually still alive at the time. Whatever it was eventually dropped hard to the floor and rustled around, growl, scream, laughing in the dry leaves for a while, before disappearing. This was not any normal creature that I'd ever seen. I really can't explain what it was, but it was so terrifying I just froze in my bed. I had my window wide open, with no screen, and couldn't even get myself to close the window shut until it disappeared. My window was about 15 feet up high, with no trees or branches for an animal to hover like that. It was just a bizarre incident, and what sucks is that I don't think anyone believes me when I tell it. Anyways, have any of you experienced this knocking in the early hours, waking you up? Does it feel positive or negative for you? And how do you deal with it? I'd love to hear some of your experiences. 5. For a bit of context about me, I'm a 36-year-old male, live near Atlanta, am married, and truthfully live a pretty boring life. I'm former Navy, former law enforcement, and currently have a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I'm also a huge gamer and PC nerd. I haven't been religious since I was about 8, and when people ask what I believe in, I simply reply, I believe in science, and leave it at that. There is another side of me that listens to Alan Watts' Chill Step at night and ponder the deeper questions of reality and our universe. But in most day-to-day situations I'm very logical, and usually try to debunk things at first. But when logic and science cannot explain some things that happen, that's when you start to really question everything. One of my earliest core memories I have from about 4 years old in 1990 was the ghost I saw in my grandparents' house in Florida. I remember my mom sitting on the couch in the living room, talking with both of them, so I ran off through the house to explore instead of listening to the grown-ups talk. There was a dividing wall that separated the living room where they were from another room my grandparents called the den, that was used for other social visits when they hosted guests. I was in the back hallway of the house, peeking into the den around the doorframe of the hallway. As I'm peeking around the doorframe into the den, it's a long rectangular-shaped room with just blank white on the left wall and a row of curtained windows on the long right wall. Mind you, this is broad daylight on a sunny spring day, so there was a lot of bright ambient light coming in from the windows. And I'll never forget what I saw until the day I die. This old, wrinkly lady in Victorian-style dress floating in midair in the middle of the room. She was maybe 10 or 15 feet from me, floating about a foot off the ground, looking at the wall. So I was looking at her left side. I'm not an artist, and I cannot draw to save my life, but this image is so clear in my mind I wish I could paint it or draw it. Her dress was blue, with frizzy lace around the wrists and neck being white. She had silver-grey hair pulled back into a bun behind her head. She was also translucent, so I could see her, but I could also see through her. There was a dining room table and about 6 wooden chairs behind her that I could see through her. I could also not see her feet, just the bottom of her dress, as it waved slightly in a very ethereal way, about a foot off the ground. She turned her head to the left and looked directly at me, which I actually don't remember scaring me at the time, then turned her head back to the front, then looked upward, and kind of evaporated upwards toward the ceiling, and disappeared. That is the clearest memory I have in my entire brain, even more so than other core memories from that young age range. It is crystal clear in my mind's eye. We found out later that my grandfather had originally bought the house from an old man whose wife had died in the house, and he was too old to keep up the land anymore. So we think maybe I saw her. We're not really sure. We also realized later on that if not for that left wall being there, the one the lady was looking at, she would have been looking directly at the back of my mom's head. Like if not for that wall being there, she was actually watching the three of them talk, if that makes sense. Kinda creepy. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 299. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please spoop the like button and share the video around with friends and family. 299. We had a milestone next week, but before then, we will have a special Halloween video, Halloween Spooktacular, out on Monday. I'm shooting for 30 stories, but we'll see. Right, no special shoutouts today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: little quirks that you know you shouldn't do, but have no intention of changing, if you're willing to share. Like one of mine, and I'm doing it right now as I record this, is whenever you order something, if they have a tracking app and they let you see on the map where they are, I follow that very closely as soon as the map pops up, just so I can be ready to answer the door whenever they come. And maybe I shouldn't be as rigorous with it, because generally speaking, at least with Amazon, they'll leave your packages for you. You know, it's just you go and get them when you're ready. But I do it, and I don't think I'll be changing that habit. But if you're willing, please do let me know what some of yours are, and leave your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.